It is Thursday, 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. That means this is the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitnie Wiley, and we are here talking about leadership. And today we're going to be talking actually about coaching. What is coaching? How it can benefit you and your people. It is International Coaching Week, and the theme for 2022 is reimagining the future, to reimagine the future. And so I want to start in a simple place. Robert, first of all, howdy.
Howdy, back at you.
Second of all, what is coaching? What is this thing of coaching?
Coaching is a partnership between two individuals that allows the coachee or the client to come up with solutions that they never would have thought of. And when I say solutions, it could be solutions to help them achieve a goal or to overcome a challenge. And I say it like that. My thing that I say to my clients is when you work with a coach, you have two brains. So now you double the brain power.
I love that. I have not phrased it that way before, but that certainly is the way. Certainly when I think of mastermind groups, I certainly think of that, right? You have this collective brain power, and certainly with a coach, you have the benefit of a second brain and someone who can help you think outside the box, to help you get unstuck, unblocked, to tap into the answers that, quite frankly, you probably already have and just haven't figured out how to bring out, right? And so let's talk a little bit about your journey as a coach and what brought you to that work, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Like nearly everything in my career, I got to coaching accidentally. I am an accidental everything. So I was working in an organization doing a lot of OD work, organizational development work. And my director at the time came up to me one day and said, I think you'd be a great executive coach. And I had experience with coaching because I had worked with coaches before. And so I don't want to name drop, but one of them is fairly well known. And I'd worked with coaches before. And so I knew what coaching was, but I never considered that I would be a coach. And so my former director, wanted to add coaching to the menu of things that were offered by the department. The difference was he didn't care whether or not I was qualified or not. He was like, go out and coach. And so as crazy as this sounds, I think you know the story. I got a book because I'm one of those people that likes to read. I think I can figure this thing out. So I got a book and it was just awful. The book was great. I was awful. I didn't know what I was doing. And so, I went there, into coaching with this like script that, as soon as you put the script out there, the coachee would, veer off the script because they don't, life is not scripted. And so after about 3 sessions like that, I went back to my director and said, let's stop doing this. This is not going to work. And then I said, let me find some place where I can get educated and learn how to become a coach and do this properly. And I went into a training program that was 9 months long and over 300 hours of training. And I learned how to become a real coach.
So it's interesting that, our paths throughout our lives have been similar in a lot of respects and then very dissimilar in others. And so my journey to a coach has been more planned, more deliberate and intentional, but probably as circuitous as any path could be, right? So, I came to this personal development space, professional development space through, I guess probably the modern, grandfather, godfather, father of coaching. I believe at the time that he started coaching, there wasn't really an industry called coaching at the time. And so the very first thing that I did was I sort of branded myself as a personal development consultant, right? So that, because term coaching, as it related to life coaching and the work that we do, wasn't really there. Obviously, there were people doing the work. There were people that were doing various aspects of the work, but not as coaches as we know it. So, I came up with this term. And let's just say that first foray didn't go very well, didn't go very far. So I put it on the back burner, which is one of those things that I had done in my life. And so I went on and did other things. Eventually, I went to law school, had a career in government affairs, legal affairs, but I was still being pulled towards something that wasn't happening in the world that I was working in. And, one of those, I guess, one of those serendipitous moments, I was going through some emails and there was an invitation to go to coaching school. And I was like, oh, interesting. I was like, that's something, that I would like to do. And it was something that I was doing on the side at work, right? I'm one of those people that people come to for advice for whatever reason that is. And particularly as it related to careers and sort of how to go move forward. And I think because I'm a pretty good problem solver, and when it's not my own issues, can be pretty creative and think outside the box. And so it was just one of those moments. I wasn't particularly happy in the work that I was doing. I was more and more people were just naturally coming to me looking for alternatives to get out of the situation that we were in. And then this email popped up. And so I went to coaching school at the time, of course, knowing that there is no, there are no real standards for coaching, right? There's no requirement, unlike being a doctor or a lawyer or something. You don't have to have a particular education or anything like that. And so, but I thought, well, wouldn't this be cool? Because like you, I didn't know how to be a coach, right? I was just doing what I knew how to do. And so I went to the program that I went to, got my certificate, and the rest, as they say, is history. And eventually I took that and what I built as a foundation, sort of as my side hustle, this side gig, and eventually it is now, along with consulting and some other things that I do, it is where I am and what I do. So you have had the benefit of working in companies internally, right, as an internal coach, and now you are doing work as an external coach. You're a coach for hire. Tell me a little bit about the difference between those two experiences. I don't have the former. I've not been an internal coach, so just would like to know a little bit about your experience and how they are different, if at all, so that our audience can understand and appreciate that distinction.
There are some differences. It was very interesting, and I always try to approach this when you ask me questions like that. From a very I try to be as non-judgmental as possible. But I'm going to start with some of the things that happened when I was an internal coach and how I was able to overcome those things. When I first was asked to become a coach, it was just, like I said, it was just for my director to add this new, skill set to the department. There wasn't really any direction there. And so it was very interesting that I started noticing some things when I first started coaching, right? So one of the things that I noticed when you're coaching internally, you may be at the whim of the organization, their culture, and how they do things. And one of the things that happened was I would coach people. People would come to me because they were they would get assigned to me as a coach because they were in trouble. So it was mandated coaching. And then, then it would get fired, right? They would go to coaching and it would get fired. So I started realizing.
Wait a minute. So then I'm just thinking, people are like, if I go to coaching, Robert's going to get me fired.
Well, it wasn't me. So it was
happening. I know it wasn't you, but there's like
exactly
out there this connection. It's like, ooh, you see Robert, you end up without a job.
Exactly. And I started to realize that, and you know me, I analyze a lot of stuff, that it was pretty much a ploy for the organization to say, well, we tried to help the person out.
Yeah.
So, it didn't work. So they were going to fire the person anyway. So let's send them the coaching to make it look like, and I went to my director, I was like, we're not doing that anymore. And I tell, when as a person that developed leadership training programs in an organization as well, I would tell my mentees, you got 3 magic bullets in your career, right? In an organization. I used one of my magic bullets. I went and said, we're not going to do this anymore. If you're going to fire somebody, fire them without me. Don't have this pretense that you're going to help them and then terminate them. I said, if you send them to me, make it because you're legitimately trying to save that person's job. Otherwise, I won't do it. And I was just very clear, so that was one of my magic bullets. And then we did that. And I said, the other thing that we're going to do is we're not just going to send people that aren't quote unquote in trouble. We're going to open this up for people that want to develop themselves, develop their leadership skills, develop their team. That way we can serve everyone in the organization, not just people who are quote unquote in trouble. I said, if you're going to terminate somebody, then you need to do something different. Don't include me in that. And so, especially coaching, because I didn't want coaching. Coaching is a wonderful thing. I didn't want it to have this negative connotation, which is what it was starting to get. It was like, oh, you're going to work with this person, you must be in trouble. And I was like, no, we're not going to do that. And so,
no, I think that is an awesome thing. First of all, that you would stand up for yourself, but for the organization, right? And to view the tool of coaching as a positive, not as a some method of last resort.
Right.
That it can have actually a very positive effect and positive impact on your employees, and in reality, it does have that. There are financial benefits to a company from using coaching as a tool to help with growth and help your employees perform better and manage business, their time, etc., emotions, right? And so to not take advantage of that and look at it as sort of, this person is on their way out, let's make it look like something other than it was.
Yeah.
What a benefit it was for them to have you standing up.
Well, I had to use one of my magic bullets, quote unquote, but it helped the organization.
I wonder how many magic bullets I've used.
Hey,
probably more than 3.
Well, after 3, you start to getting yourself into trouble, right? So I use them wisely. I tell people, you got 3, right? You got 3. And so I went and I said, let's look at how we can build this program so that it's a benefit to everyone in the organization. And that was a huge turning point for the department and myself in my career, because it was one of the I felt really strongly about that. And I felt that, I'm not going to do something that's going to be against my values. And I didn't want to do anything that was going to possibly come back and harm the organization as well. And I certainly didn't want to do any damage to, people in the organization or the department, because the department, doing things like that can give your department a bad name. Contrasting that with being an external coach, most of the people that I've been working with, they use it in that, hey, look, this is a developmental tool. This is something that we're going to offer you so that you can grow your skill set. You can look at, problem solve, or, reach goals that you've had professionally for yourself or for your team. One of the things that I've noticed with a lot of the organizations that I've worked with is that they want to use a coach to help their leaders gain some coaching skills, to show them how to use coaching with their folks as well. And that has been it's a good chunk of what I do. It's not the majority, but it's a good chunk of what I do. And a lot of the times what I'm noticing is that before I even mention that to the clients, they're picking up on that. They're like, hey, I can use this. I can use this approach with my team, because I'm seeing the benefit of this kind of approach. So that's the difference between the two.
And I love that you made that connection, and that you're helping your clients make that connection, because I think that's really important. We talked about in another episode sort of the three-legged stool of employee development, right? And it's training, mentoring, and coaching. And while hiring outside coaches is an awesome thing to do if you have the resources that can do it, even if you do that, or if you don't, that you would have managers, leaders, supervisors that are able to provide coaching as part of how they are interacting and leading their teams, is actually a very helpful and productive way for them to develop their people, right? So if you can get the coaching, mentoring, and training piece of the three pieces moving, you're well on your way to creating, but developing employees that will, be the things that they want to be, one, and what you need them to be, two, to be productive and happy, engaged members of your team, both directly in your department, but the organization overall. And so having that skill, right? You can go to some official training, but working with a coach that can help you with that skill just becomes, a value add for your people.
Yeah, I think, it's amazing to me when they have that revelation. They're like, this is really helpful to me. I wonder how it can. Oh, wow. Yeah, you can use this with your team. And instead of you telling them what to do all the time, they can come up with solutions, and they can tap into their own internal resources. And the added benefit of that is people are more likely to do things that they create. So they're going to have the buy-in, they're going to feel more accountable, and it moves them in a direction that is much more positive than if the leader is being directive all the time.
Absolutely. And it's interesting. This week I was doing some training, and I had one of the students in the class, the trainees, sort of came to that same place. She's like, "Oh, I could use this, with my team." And it's like, absolutely, right. And it becomes about particularly asking questions, right? You ask questions so that you are drawing out of the answers out of someone that they already have. Sometimes immediately, sometimes it takes a while before, right? And so you pose these questions, and eventually they come around. So do you have a coach? Have you said you worked with coaches in the past, and you worked with coaches before you became a coach? Do you still work with coaches, or whether regularly or here and there for things that you need?
Absolutely. I have a coach. I have a coach that I work with regularly. Over the years, it's been, well, let's take a break for a little bit and then come back and work with her some more. So I have a coach, and we've been, I don't know, I got introduced to her probably in 2016, I think. But I also have friends that are coaches. You know how we do. I mean, we have, and so whenever I get stuck, I may reach out to one of those friends and be like, I'm having this issue. Can you coach me through it? I also do additional training as a coach because I'm always looking to sharpen that sword, So I have met tons of other coaches through additional training that I can ask for, additional coaching and sometimes advice.
So one of the things that I included in sort of the description of what we're talking about today is just some information from a ICF study, the International Coaching Federation study. Shows that most clients report improved work performance, better business management, more efficient time management, increased team effectiveness, and more growth and opportunities, right? And that 80% of companies that make this investment in their employees actually see a return on investment. I want to know, and again, you've been both internal and external, and I'm not going to ask you to quantify, but I'm interested in understanding some of the ways, right? We could talk about in general ways that coaching helps, but some of the ways without, telling somebody's full story or naming names, but some of the benefits of working with a coach in general, but you in particular, because you're a particular kind of coach. Right. And a lot of coaches have specialties or niches. And you are an executive coach. So you are working with people in general. And I know you work outside of this, but in general, you're working with people who are C-suite, managers aspiring to C-suite people. So what are some of the benefits of working with you that you've seen with your clients over the years?
The benefits to work with me in particular. I'm
just hanging out with you, right?
Yeah, well, I'm a pretty off the wall person. So if you're stuck, I'm certainly going to get you thinking differently. So looking at things from many different angles, that's one of the things that I bring to my clients that I work with. But one of the benefits that I see in particular, not just work with me, but coaching in general, is that let's just start with some of the challenges that I've seen this year, right? And we can like pull them apart that way. From 2022, one of the two big things that I've seen, and I work with clients from all different, types of organizations. But one thing that I see as a kind of common theme, there's two things, is time management issues, where and it comes in kind of a different buckets, because it's time management where leaders know that they're taking on too much because they're not delegating, right? They're not delegating because they may not fully trust that their team can handle the thing that they want to give them, or they're not sure what they should give their team. So one of the things that we do is we look at this, and besides being off the wall, I'm very analytical. So we dig into that, and we look at, okay, what are what's holding you back from doing that? What are some things that you think you can delegate to your team? To your team members, And then we look at why, right? What's the reason? It shouldn't be just to take it off of your plate, because that's helpful. And I always look for, how can we do two things at once? That's the other thing that I try to do. Two things at once. So how can you take it off your plate and help them grow at the same time? So that it's not just something that they're doing that, they have no connection to. And it's freeing up time for you, but they're hating you for it. Right? They're like, got me doing this terrible job, right? Just because my leader wants it off of their plate, but something that's going to help them grow. We look at ways how they can connect that to the aspirations of their team member. So those stretch assignments, it could be added visibility. It could be, a really important meeting that the leader was tapped to go to, but they're giving that to their team member to do, prepping them, making sure they're prepped. So it's, they're not just sitting there and you're getting, handed questions that they can't handle, but really prepping them, preparing them for that. So it becomes really, you're doing two things. You're developing that person, and you're removing that responsibility off of your plate. So that's one of the things that we were looking at. Many of my clients now also, they have this this blurred line, because many of them have not transitioned back into the office. They're still working from home. And so it's this, I don't know when to stop working, because before I can say, okay, I'm out of the office, I'm with my family, I'm done working.
Right.
But now that line has gotten so blurry that they're like, okay, my office is 10 feet over that way. And I just got this email. I know we're sitting down to dinner. Let me go and answer this email. So it's helping, and that creates a lot of stress. So it's dealing with the stress that comes with that, and really helping them set some really concrete boundaries. And then the flip side of that is, because they're spending all this extra time working, because they don't know when to stop working, because it was 5 o'clock at one point, then it was 6 because they're working from home. Then they're like, well, I can get more work done. Now it's at 8. Then they have this kind of guilt where it's like, all right, well, now I need to spend a ton of time with my family because I'm guilty. And then they spend zero time for themselves.
Right.
So we have nothing to give. It was helping them find that, those slices where they can look at, okay, let's set some boundaries so that you can have that I no longer call it work-life balance. I just call it life balance, because work has become life now. It's like it's in your home now. So those are some of the things, and taking those, offbeat approaches, looking at things differently, and being analytical about that, breaking things down and giving them little bite-sized chunks that later they can start expanding.
Yeah, I've worked primarily with women. I have had, and I don't have any male clients at the moment. I have had here and there, but primarily with women, primarily professional women, lawyers, in-house counsel, to get more specific, lots of in-house counsel clients, and they are having the same sorts of issues, right? And my practice is basically built on around people who are managing their career and then looking to make transitions in their career, generally looking to move up or move out, change jobs, get promotions, etc. And these are the same sorts of issues. Time management, boundaries, setting boundaries is huge. Burnout, right? From not managing time well, not balancing, not being balanced, but balancing the priorities. And so working to help them get clear on what those priorities are, so that they can make the choices that need to be made in order to live the life ultimately and do the work that they want to do. And the other thing, particularly with women, is this issue of confidence. And finding confidence. Very accomplished women that I work with who still are have fears and doubts about who they are, what they bring to the table, particularly as it relates to moving up. And so, working through the same sorts of things, and helping them to see the value that they bring, and trusting in that becomes, the nature of the work that I've been doing. So, you know, two different paths, two different sort of, approaches. I have worked with coaches in the past. I am mostly in a couple of masterminds that all the members of my masterminds are coaches. And then, of course, I have you, and we meet weekly. We don't get together to coach each other, but on occasion it happens. And I feel really blessed to have coaches in my life that help me to stay on track, to not get stuck, right? And I feel like as long as I'm putting one foot in front of the other, it may not be perfect, right? And for you, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Right.
Something I shared today, it's like it's progress over perfection. And when we embrace that concept of just continuously taking another step, planning, priorities, and then persistence, right, get you where it is you want to go. So this week is, again, International Coaching Week. And the theme for the year is Reimagine the Future. So let's close with some thought on reimagining the future, for you, for your clients, or how to help someone to reimagine the future. The leaders that we're talking to right now, how can, maybe there's a piece of advice or something you would offer up to say, this is how you can get started reimagining the future, and how coaching may be a helpful part of that.
Wow, that's a really great way to end. For me, one of the things that I do to help my clients reimagine the future, and this is what coaching is. Coaching is future focused. And one of the things that I noticed, that sometimes when I'll say my client has a particularly difficult situation, and I go, in a perfect world, what would it look like? And I sometimes really have to push when I ask that question, because the person will say, well, it could be this, but I go, let's leave the but out of it for right now. In a perfect world, what would it look like? So to reimagine the future, really think about what you want. Don't put in, I can't do that because this is going to happen, because you don't know that it will. It may have happened in the past, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen again.
Right.
So look at your future in the perfect way. Then come out of it and say, okay, what are some of the obstacles that are likely to pop up, and how will I deal with them? A lot of times people they'll start to imagine their future, and as soon as they hit that first imagine or an obstacle, they stop and they go, I can't do it because of that. But they take it a step further and work with, or try to come up with a solution to that challenge, and you'll be surprised at how far you get.
It's such a good point. The three things I am constantly reminding my clients of, and reminding myself of, I do a lot of self-coaching, is that it's all about opportunities, possibilities, and potentialities, right? And when I stay focused on that, right, it doesn't always turn out, like you said, that it doesn't always turn out the way I envision, but I have to start there. I have to start with a picture of what the future looks like, what it could be, right? And not what I'm afraid it will be. And you talked about future focus. It's also, again, it's about the possibilities. And when we focus on the possibilities rather than the obstacles, except as it relates to helping us sort of think through and plan, if, these things come up, how can I move through them?
Right.
Because when you then see them, you've already worked through it in your mind, right? Or at least you're not caught off guard when it presents itself. And that's a lot of what happens. People hit an obstacle, they don't know how to deal with it, address it, particularly as it relates to issues of perfection, fear, and I had one other, perfection, fear. Anyway, there was something else that occurred to me, and it flew right out of my head. That if we don't allow those things to stop us, again, just take another step, right? And you figure it out as you go. You figure it. It doesn't have to unfold a particular way. You keep your eye on the prize, the eye on the future, your vision, what you've imagined or reimagined, but it doesn't, and then be open to it unfolding in lots of magnificent, magical, glorious ways, right? And getting to a place that you may never have actually thought of, because you had been focused somewhere else. So the last thing I want to say here is that obstacles are not really an issue. They're I see them as a test, really, to see how badly you want what you say you want, right? And so if an obstacle pops up and you are not willing to figure out how to push through, go under, over, around, or barrel through. And sometimes that may even mean taking a step back and, taking off full bore and then jumping over something. If you're not willing to do that, then maybe you didn't want what you said you wanted as much as you thought you did. And that's always something that, I'm working with my clients. Like, this is a test. Do you really want this? Or do you think this is what you're supposed to do because it's the next thing, right? Which is a lot of the work that I do. You work your way up, in a law firm or a legal department, and you think the next step is, whatever, general counsel, and you get there and you go, yeah, I don't want this so much, right? The obstacle, resistance, it's feedback and an opportunity to get curious about whether or not, one, this is really what you want. And then if it is, coming up with a plan and process for moving beyond it.
Absolutely.
Cool. So do you need a coach? Yes. Right? Yes, everyone could use a coach. Well, and then, I guess, do you need a coach? No one needs a coach, unless you really need a coach. But in general, working with a coach will help you to, get clarity on your goals, to help you bridge gaps in your knowledge, confidence, skills, resources. It will help you accelerate your results. The very first thing Robert said was, now you got two brains working for you, right? Mm-hmm. Two brains working for you. And who couldn't benefit from having a second mind that is there and focused, helping you to, test your mindset, test your beliefs, test the limiting beliefs that may be keeping you in a place that you're trying to move through. So, in that respect, yeah, we could all use a coach. And if you want to hire a coach, give Robert and or I a call or send a message, a DM. We would be happy to talk with you. I do offer, a complimentary session to test the waters, see what coaching is, with me. I believe Robert does the same thing.
Mhm.
And if it's not Robert or I, find someone else. All right, find someone else. Find someone who will help you to become the best you, the best version of you that you can be and that you desire to be. And we want to thank you for joining us. Again, it's International Coaching Week. We invite you to reimagine your future, right? As a leader, as an employee, as a spouse, a partner, parent, friend, whatever. Reimagine that future. Look at the possibilities, the real opportunities, and the potential for you to step in to a glorious future. And we want to thank you for joining us here for the State of Leadership, Simple and Beyond. Again, we're here on Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific, and we look forward to seeing you next time. So take care.
Bye now.